shirt. And we are back. It's been a long week, but we're back. Going to rewind just a little bit because we got cut off in the midst of August 11th, so we will restart August 11th, 86 days to the election. One reason I'd come home to the Bay Area was to address nearly 700 key supporters who together, just that evening, had raised over $12 million for my campaign. There were many long-standing friends there, but two of the faces I was happiest to see were Amara's and Leela's. They dashed into my arms and I hugged and loved them up. It had been only a couple of weeks since I'd waved goodbye to them from my helicopter, but so much had happened. When Nancy Pelosi, vivid in a fuchsia pantsuit, walked on stage to introduce me, the audience stood in applause. She had been the most skilled House Speaker since Tip O'Neill. Still think that is arguable, but whatever. Branded San Francisco liberal, her opponents soon learned that she was genetically a Baltimore girl, steely, pragmatic, and resilient. Okay, we're just throwing words out there. Everyone in that room believed she'd been a factor in changing the fate of this campaign because she was. She rallied hard to get Joe Biden to step down, then had buyer's remorse, then just got on board. In her pointed public statements and in private, she brought some realism to Joe and his inner circle, forcing them to confront the dwindling money and tanking polls. But part of her job as Speaker of the House is to raise money. When I ran for San Francisco DA in 2003, Nancy had supported the incumbent I was running against. When I won, she praised my strategy. She had been blunt about preferring a mini primary after Joe stepped down, but she quickly offered her full support to me once she realized I had the numbers and the vocal support of so many other party leaders. She is the quintessential career politician. It's not about doing what's best for the people, it's doing what aesthetically looks good, what optics-wise looks good for her. Not shocking. She's a Euro-American woman. Before my speech, I had a meet and greet with some high-level donors. I pulled aside one of the most long-standing and generous, a leader in Silicon Valley. My head close to his ear, I said, "I'm concerned about Musk. Are you guys on top of it? Why did you wait until 86 days before the election to be concerned about the tech bros? You had an opportunity to gather minorities in STEM, to get the tech girlies on your side. Missed opportunity. Missed opportunity." I wanted reassurance that the tech people who supported democracy were putting resources into combating mis- and disinformation, combating lies. Just call it what it is. We needed a counterforce to whatever might be brewing, and I knew that the campaign I'd inherited didn't have the skill set or the resources for it. So why weren't you confronting this before 86 days before the election? The people I knew in Silicon Valley had a much better grasp of how deep the roots went, how far they spread. So why weren't they among your first calls? Elon Musk had set off my spidey senses long before his MAGA fixation and his endorsement of Trump. Both SpaceX and Tesla sprang to life in California, and millions of California taxpayers had helped the companies prosper. But when Democrats tried to tie electric car subsidies to workplace standards, Tesla had been sued for labor violations, including racial discrimination and suppressing union organizing efforts. Well, Musk is from South Africa, and he is the child of apartheid. That's why his family ended up in South Africa, to partake in apartheid. Why are y'all shocked that people are their ancestors? Musk began a rightward pivot. He got red-pilled. It accelerated during COVID because all he had to was to be online chronically, and he got red-pilled. Mix racism with getting red-pilled. Whoo! When he refused to close the Tesla plant to protect the health of his workers. When he moved his operations to Texas, he claimed it was because the state offered more freedom, which was the height of hypocrisy since Texas, with its draconian abortion ban and the privacy-shredding policies around it, violated the most basic of human liberties. First of all, when people are talking about freedom, freedom is one of the newer dog whistles when it comes to just wanting to enslave people. See, they sold you the story that slavery was abolished. No, the parameters of slavery just changed. And they started giving slavery a multitude of names to make it more palatable for you. Why do you think we have 50 different words that all mean the same thing? Musk is a talented entrepreneur. I wouldn't say that. He's white and rich and comes from money. I would not ascribe talent to that. But there are genius engineers behind the cars and rockets, such as Tesla's former longtime chief technical officer, J.B. Straubel, who deserve just as much credit. No, he deserves all of the credit. All of the credit. Despite what I think of Musk, I believe Joe Biden made a mistake in not inviting him to the White House in 2021 for an event promoting our electric vehicle policy. No, all partnerships and all networking isn't for the greater good. You just listed what Musk had going on. And we watched Musk do what the Musk family has always done. Throw money around to get what they want. And they will get knee deep into politics for their benefit and their benefit alone. Musk doesn't even have loyalty to the children that he begged to be born. I shared this view with his team. Behind the president on the lawn that day were electric Fords, Chevys, Jeeps, American-made Teslas, and then the world's most innovative and successful electric cars were nowhere to be seen. Were they the most innovative? There were a lot of people who have been injured because of Teslas. There are a lot of people who have lost their lives because of Tesla. I personally know someone who lost a sibling who burned to death in a malfunctioning Tesla. Recently, there was a report. Now, this driver, I don't know what he was thinking, but his car refused to stop at a railroad crossing when there was a train detected. Then he put it on autopilot again, and while doing an interview in his car, it did it again. Can we stop bootlicking wealthy white men, especially just because they're wealthy white men? We don't have to lie and call them talented. We can tell the truth, because when we start to tell the truth about these people, we can start getting back on the road of innovation, of artistry, of education. Y'all keep wondering why we're at a stalemate and we don't have any new creativity. This is why. If you keep telling people that mediocrity is the standard, what do you think we're going to continue to get? Biden, loyal to the UAW, as he should be, was sending a message about Musk's anti-union stance, or his bigotry, or his racism, or his sexism, or him putting workers' lives in jeopardy. Or for the fact that his innovations look incomplete, and they look like incomplete preschooler art projects. Maybe, just maybe, we should stop rewarding mediocrity. You keep making jokes about No Child Left Behind and participation trophy generations. They've always been around. But as President of the United States, if you are convening the nation's manufacturers of electric vehicles and the biggest player in the field is not there, it simply doesn't make sense. Musk never forgave him. No business owner should have that much power over politics. You should not be concerned about one business owner who should not have been at the ball and should not have been touted as the belle of the ball, who didn't get an invite, who was outside the club looking in, rightfully so. Then you should have been concerned about the people he was a detriment to. How do you start off saying, hey, here is why he's a detriment to society, but we should have given him a seat at the table? I'm sorry, what? Absolutely not. Since he had acquired Twitter and sacked its content moderators and fact checkers, the platform had become a den of conspiracy theories and alt-right bile. Once again, he is the product of apartheid South Africa. He's red-pilled and he lacks humanity. But you wanted him at the table, yet you keep listing why he should never be at the political table. And maybe if everyone would have continued to give him consequences and repercussions, he would snap out of it. Did you think of that? It was also, increasingly, Musk's personal megaphone for boosting Trump and denigrating me. Was it though? Because that's an echo chamber. Twitter is an echo chamber. They speaking to themselves. They're not speaking to the masses. Most people go over to Twitter to see porn or mess. Like if somebody wants some juicy, salacious tea, that's where they're going. Okay. Musk had announced that he would interview Trump live on X the next evening. He would deliver Trump the opportunity to spew his lies free of fact-checking. And in the days that followed, he would deliver a whole lot more. Yeah, I listened in to that. It wasn't so much an interview. It was a bromance. It was a white man telenovela. Yeah, and once again, it was an echo chamber. It was truly an echo chamber. I think, and we've all been guilty of it. We can get too deep in our own head, especially when we know that we have opponents out there. But whether you know of the opponent or not, the fact that you're still flourishing means that your opponents aren't that good. Don't give them so much energy. It's easy to do so. I've fallen prey to that myself. But you learn, and you learn to do better. August 12th, 85 days to the election. This space is not available. That was the message in the dead air of what was supposed to be the live stream between Trump and Musk. The conversation, due to start at 8 p.m., finally kicked off at 8:42 p.m. Musk couldn't even run a live stream in the year 2024. This is why I said stop touting Trump as Musk, as some technological genius. He's not. He's not. His own children have come out and talked about his lack of understanding and his inability to navigate technology, even the technology that he strong arms his way into. He doesn't develop anything. He sues to get his name attached to development credits. How very Taylor Swift of him. If you know, you know. What followed, eventually, was the usual litany of insults and lies. At least 20 false claims, according to CNN fact checkers, as the two edgelords stroked each other's egos. How the hell you know what an edgelord is, but you worried about them screaming into an abyss? An abyss of brainless bigots that enjoy convening for a virtual circle jerk. Okay. I thought back to meetings I'd convened with other business leaders and CEOs when we were advocating our Build Back Better agenda. People who had shown that you can build great companies while taking care of your workforce and the planet. Among them were Hamdi Ulukaya of Chobani, Allison Rittenor of Seventh Generation, Jenna Johnson of Patagonia, and Josh Silverman of Etsy. My apologies for any mispronunciations. It was not intentional. All the leaders I'd invited ran highly successful businesses that also supported childcare and or paid leave policies for their employees, as they should. Let me say this again. Happy, healthy employees that can pay their bills are far more productive. When someone is sitting there in pain, distracted by hunger, distracted by how they're going to make ends meet, they're going to increase resentment towards the company, so they're not going to give their best. They're going to spend most of their time looking for another place of employment or side gigs, or they're going to increase mistakes. And the worse you treat employees, the greater numbers of recalls we're having. We would discuss how our agenda would support childcare and therefore help the corporate bottom line. When families don't have reliable quality care for their kids, it increases absenteeism, lowers productivity, and leads to higher turnover. The estimated losses to earnings and revenues are $57 billion a year. And be reminded that it costs more to onboard a new employee than it does to sustain a current employee. These younger leaders in the corporate world understand that paid leave gave a good return on investment. It was not only the right thing to do, but it made economic sense. It's a win-win for workers and the companies. People work more productively and without distraction if they know their kids are well cared for. Our goal in the Build Back Better legislation was to ensure that no parent who wants to work or who has to work would end up paying more than 7% of their income on child care. The Republicans, of course, mischaracterized these provisions in the legislation. They called it socialism. I call it capitalism and a great ROI. Here's the thing. The United States is not a totality of capitalism. It is a melting pot of multiple isms. And that's how we work. If you're so against socialism, cool. Get your debit card out and every little thing you need, be prepared to pay for it. Be prepared to pay for and maintain the strip of land in front of your house, in front of your business. If anything happens, be prepared to take out your debit card and have it swiped, and hopefully it hasn't been stolen. If you need to utilize the police department, you need the paramedics, swipe. You need the fire department, swipe. You need all of these things, swipe. Like, what do you think your taxes go into? Why do you... August 19th, 78 days to the election. The convention, day 1. It was supposed to have been Joe Biden's convention. COVID had robbed him of a big celebration when he won the nomination in 2020. And now, I suppose, part of him felt robbed again. There were people robbed of wedding ceremonies, christenings, birthdays, graduations, retirement parties, having people there when they went in for surgery, being able to congregate and bury people. I think he'll be all right. I think he'll be all right. The long signs prepared for the crowd to wave during his climactic speech that night inadvertently told the whole story. "We love Joe," they read, and in small print, "Paid for by Harris for president." I was sensitive to how he and his family must be feeling. It was not the end of any of them. It was not the end that any of them had wanted for his 50 years of public service. Well, it's better than him dying in office. Crude to say? Yes. Honest to say? Yes. Also what many of you were thinking. And I think another pitfall that Harris herself put into this campaign was thinking too much about Joe Biden instead of thinking more about the people that she was campaigning to serve. Oh, yeah, I know. I know, Vix. I'm just... You know. But I was also extremely proud of what we had accomplished in 4 years. This convention would have the big emotional beats, the important speeches, but it would also be fun. We put thought into engaging young delegates. There was a special area set up for social media influencers, and DJ Cassidy was going to turn the sometimes tedious roll call into a nationwide dance party, spinning music organic to each state. Here's the thing. And I don't care what party you align with. I don't. And I've said this as we've read this book. I've said this as I've covered news and discussed history. Oh, yeah, too bad for them, isn't that, Fix? You have to think about the entirety of your constituency. What has been the thorn in the side of all major political parties in the United States has been focusing on one demographic over another, one age group over the other, as if they're the only ones that vote. As if you don't know who the majority of voters will be until they vote. You don't know who's going to turn out the most until they turn out. You can try to predict all you want, but you're not going to know. Excluding people or causing people to feel excluded is never a good thing. Yes, include first-time voters, but include them by educating them. And don't forget to educate folks that may not have been educated when they're younger, but also don't forget about those in their mid to late 20s, those in their 30s, those in their 40s, those in their 50s, those that are coming up on retirement, those that are already retired, and how all of these things are going to affect them. You keep wanting to focus on the next, forgetting about who's sustaining right now. And a lot of times the people that you're focusing on the most, yes, they're getting out to vote, but they're not going to feel these repercussions for a while because they still have mommy, daddy, grandma, and granddaddies, and aunties, and uncles, and older sisters and brothers cushions. You have to meet the people how the people are. Stop trying to come in all buttoned up in suit and tie everywhere and speak to everybody where they are. You're supposed to be the voice of the people, so show that you can speak to all of the people. I love our conventions. I love running into delegates from Alaska and American Samoa, Mississippi, and Maine. Americans united by a passion for democracy. Is it really a passion for democracy that unites people at the conventions? Or is it other things? I love that at this huge event, the jumbotrons, TV cameras, lights, speakers, there's real intimacy in the hall. Local organizers and political icons rubbing shoulders, elected leaders and grassroots activists and big donors thrown together for the intense 4 days. Networking. Networking. It is a huge networking event. Whether you have political aspirations, journalistic aspirations, whatever, it's a networking event. And it's okay to say that's what it is. Regardless of what party you ascribe to, that's what it is. And that's okay. Because we need people to connect and align and fight the good fight together. But you don't have to make it seem like some big noble thing. We have gotten some incredible advancement because people had selfish intentions. Because people were motivated on how to fill up their resume. It's fine. You cannot spend a lifetime encouraging people to have the best, greatest resume known to man and then get upset because that's what they're out here doing. We don't have to pepper everything with beautiful words and try to make it seem like everybody is out here trying to be the superhero. No. At my very first convention in Los Angeles in 2000, I'd been a committed young Dem who hadn't yet run for anything. My bestie, Chrisette, who later introduced me to Doug, attended with me, sitting high up in the rafters cheering for Al Gore. Girly Pop, you turned 60. How the fuck was you a young... You know what? The young Republicans claim that you can be a young Republican until you're 40. So, you know what? We're going to let her have that one. Oh, the obsession with youth. I don't want to be young. Quite honestly, in this world, I would rather be old. It is truly a badge of honor to make it to elderly status. As a young Democrat and two. Okay. 12 years later, as California AG, I had my first speaking role. It didn't go to plan. The convention that year was held in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I was co-chair of the Rules Committee with Martin O'Malley, then the governor of Maryland. The city had rushed to get ready for the incoming hordes. It didn't quite succeed. Parts of the hotel booked for our California delegation remained under construction, with the manufacturer's stickers still on the elevators and no hot water in the showers. When I spoke at the delegates' breakfast, I led with a line from the Eagle song. Welcome to the Hotel California. Girl, okay, you know what? Your sense of humor is right there. But the way I would have left, well, no, I got enough friends and family in North Carolina. I'd have stayed with them. No hot water. I was supposed to give a report on the Rules Committee meeting and then, 2 nights later, a speech on my work as AG taking on the big banks. When I rehearsed, the convention director had sage advice. Walk out there like you brought that podium. You own it. It's your podium. For some people, that is great advice. It is. For other people, if you're a little nervous about public speaking, walk out there as if you're talking to your best friend. Walk out there as if you are going to be around family that you like. And take a deep breath. Because if you've been asked to speak, you know your shit. And when you have a comfort level, you go into autopilot and you'll be fine. I was trying for that confident strut. I think I see where this is going. Head up, shoulders back, with my stiletto sank right when my stiletto sank right through the floor. Kind of figured. Mm-hmm. I had found the trap door in the stage. Yeah, can we normalize these events not trying to be an offshoot of Fashion Week? If anything goes wrong with the prompter, I'd been instructed, don't worry. There's a copy of your speech on the shelf of the podium. I'm going to tell y'all a little secret. I am not a speechwriter. I do not write speeches. And for those of y'all that have seen me in public and see me at speaking engagements, you're probably going to be like, oh, it's not true. Nope. I will write down a few notes. Sometimes I follow the notes. Sometimes I don't. Once again, if I'm asked to speak, it's on something that's in my wheelhouse that I know. Yeah, that's just me. No, I'm not patting myself on the back. I'm just saying, relax. Sometimes we put too much pressure on ourselves. If you've been asked to speak, it's because you know your shit. It was the opening of the convention. The arena was filled with delegates for the very first committee report. As I looked up at the screen where I was expected to see the text of my Rules Committee remarks scrolling, I realized that they'd loaded, instead, my speech for 2 nights later. As I improvised, we had a great meeting of the Rules Committee. We talked about the rules. My hand was groping for the promised paper speech on the podium shelf. It wasn't there. Yep. No matter how many speeches I've made since then, the memory of that teleprompter fail has always been at the back of my mind. I knew it would be with me even as I walked out to accept the nomination. Of all the conventions I've attended, this was the most united in years. There'd often been undercurrents, not quite mended rifts. Hillary's supporters sour that she'd been run over by Barack. Bernie supporters resentful of Hillary's win. It was hard to detect anything but relief in this hall. We could have been staring down a very different 4 days. It could have been a contested convention, a messy floor fight. Instead, there was gratitude that Biden had passed the torch to me, relief that I'd been able to grasp it, a sense of unity and enthusiasm. Some of y'all gonna view what I'm about to say as raining on a parade. It's not. Trump was the white supremacist answer to Barack. Kamala was our hope and relief and our promise of an answer, a rebuttal to Trump. That's what that was. That's what that was. We were unified due to Trump fatigue. The enthusiasm was we were going to have our Miss Marvel come in and save the nation. That's what that was. The undertones were still there. Trust me, the Bernie bros and the Bernie babes, they're going to forever have resentment. Forever. The semi-deconstructing white women are always going to feel that Hillary was robbed by Barack. It was still there. We were just finally glad that we could exhale for a moment. Delegates wore t-shirts, some homemade, with a range of slogans. A simple, LA was popular. A playful instruction on how to pronounce my first name. Kamala is brat. A Charlie XCX reference abounded. Say it to my face, quoting my debate challenge to Trump. And Chucks and Pearls, referencing my habit of pairing Converse sneakers with my favorite pearl necklace, were also abundant. I appreciate a shirt that read, voting in my black job. A delegate and dear friend from San Francisco, Matthew J. Rothschild, proved to be a favorite with press photographers, sporting a boater hat bedazzled with sprays of glittery stars, red, white, and blue ribbons, and a Kamala doll head. It's not tradition for the nominee to speak on the first night, but I plan to make a surprise appearance to welcome everybody and praise our incredible president. Once again, Black people, but specifically black women and black film-presenting individuals, can we break the chains of being so concerned about white counterparts, especially white male counterparts, that we lose sight of the strategy that we need in that time? That we don't take the moment to relish in our accomplishments and our achievements? Can we stop giving away portions of our moments that we have clawed our way into to be concerned about the feelings of someone else? That previously in this book, that same person, Joseph Robinette Biden and his administration and his team, didn't afford you. We have a bad habit of giving more to people than what we receive. Now, I have a big rule in life. I don't ask for anything that I can't give. And if you ask me for something that you're not willing to give to me, I pull back. I pull back until I'm no longer in sight. We must collectively adopt this. And no, you don't have to be black to adopt it, but it happens to us more often than not. Multiple times in this book, she has put Joe Biden above herself, and Joe Biden and his feelings and his family's feelings and how they're going to view things above who she says she wanted to represent. Yes, Joe Biden is a human being. I get that. 50 years of public service. Okay, commendable. Yay. But let's not act like this man was out here doing volunteer work. Let's not act as if this man didn't have missteps. Let's not act as if this man didn't still possess undertones of microaggressions. Let's not pretend that this man wasn't a proud Zionist. And the presidency of the United States is a job. Your feelings do not matter at a damn job interview, and the campaign trail is a job interview. These conventions are also a part of the job interview. I don't need you more focused about a coworker or a soon-to-be former coworker than you are at the job at hand, at the scope of the position that you are applying to. Let us not forget that. We have whittled politics into things that it is not. And we have conditioned ourselves to focus on things that do not matter, that have nothing to do with the job at hand. And hello, this is how we got to where we are now. Backstage, I met up with two of the most important people from my childhood. They would speak that night, following a short biographical video about me. Stacy Johnson Batiste was my best friend in kindergarten and remains one of my closest confidants. Her mom, Doris Johnson, and my mother were dear friends. I remember them laughing. They would always cut up together. When she looked at me, held my hand, and said, "Your mother would be so proud of you," I knew she was standing in for my mother, and I could feel my throat constrict. But I would not let myself cry. I told myself, I will not do that tonight. Quick thing, quick caveat. I know people mean well when they say things like this when someone has a parent that has passed on. But I'm going to tell you, you're low-key insinuating that there was no pride to be had until that moment. And quite honestly, the pride means something when the person can convey it to you themselves. If they passed away without ever seeing you, or if they passed away without you giving them something to be proud about, but saying things like that, like, oh, yes, your mother has always been proud of you, but this would have been you all's moment. That's different. But to say, oh, your mom would, in that moment, I need y'all to think about what you say. You believe that it's giving a good sentiment, but it's really not. After I went on stage for my brief remarks, I joined the audience to sit next to Doug and Tim. I'm not sure when I started to worry, but at some point I realized that things were running behind. I knew the program. I knew what we had to get through. If they didn't pick up the pace, I feared that Joe's speech might get pushed right to the edge or even out of the prime time in the East. I can understand you be concerned about time because there are too many racial tropes regarding time and black people. I get that. There are too many tropes, gender-wise, regarding women. But once again, if you put as much focus into the campaign that you put into Joseph Robinette Biden, girly pop, I wanted Joe to have his moment. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. I couldn't figure out what was up. None of the speeches seemed to be running noticeably over time. Although I did observe that Sean Fain, sporting a Trump is a scab t-shirt, finished his timed remarks, which had been loaded in the teleprompter, and then continued his rousing defense of unions from additional notes he'd somehow smuggled onto the podium. And while the introduction said Senator Raphael Warnock, the person who actually walked onto the stage was Reverend Warnock, the head preacher at Ebenezer Baptist Church. Needless to say, he was not brief. You know, I noticed that during the convention. And here's the thing. As women and as black women, people can get way too comfortable with us. And people can decide to do their own thing because we're in charge or the moment is about us. And that's when, as a leader, you have to be okay with being the boss and not being the friend. And that's when you, as the leader right in that moment of the party, go, hey, we can't do this. This is what we agreed to do. This is what we need to stick to. Especially when your end goal is the presidency. I learned later that Biden's people were backstage, reaming out anyone and everyone. That's where you should have been. Parts of the program were untouchable. Jill Biden had to speak, then their daughter, Ashley, would introduce Joe. To gain back time, something would have to be cut. In the end, a performance by James Taylor and a video about Joe that Steven Spielberg worked on were regretfully sacrificed. Joe can build a museum and play that video. But where you should have been, instead of giving remarks and sitting out, which I understand what you wanted to do in the optics of it all, but you should have been backstage. Once you started realizing that things were running behind, that's where you should have been. That was the perfect time to show yourself as a strong leader. That you could corral them back on track. That you could get them back in stride again. He was supposed to go on at 9:44 p.m. Even with those program cuts, when Joe walked on stage, it was on stage to an almost 5-minute audience chant of "Thank you, Joe." It was 11:30 Eastern Time. He spoke for nearly an hour, detailing the accomplishments of his administration. He took that time to remind people that he was that bitch. You were so worried about giving him the moment that you didn't realize that everybody else, under the guise of being there for you, took your moment and took your spotlight. Joe has no more campaigns to run. He didn't talk about you as a person and you as a candidate. I watched it, the entirety. I still have snippets of video up on social media of it. You handed your moment away. You took part of your application and ripped it up yourself that night. It was a legacy speech for him, not an argument for me, and he was entitled to it. This is the duality that is very frustrating for me as a black woman. When I'm in the midst of other black women who unapologetically realize and can point out to me all the instances of sexism, bigotry, misogyny, and flat-out racism that they have experienced, and then they turn around and coddle those that give it to them the most. But if we waited for some personal stories about working with me and what qualities he had seen that led him to endorse me, they weren't there. No shit. You were more concerned about him and giving him his moment and his flowers, and he knew that, than you were with running a campaign. I want you to think for a minute. When Joe decided to run, what did Barack Obama do? What did Joe do for Barack when he decided to run? Not a damn thing, because he didn't owe him anything. I want y'all to think back to previous vice presidents that decided to run. What did they do in regards to the presidents that they previously served under? Hell, Lyndon B. Johnson ascended to the presidency because his boss got his head blown off. He didn't sit there and stick a pin in business to worry. Did he show respect to the family? Yes, but he realized this is a job that has to keep going. The work has to get done. You are sitting here so worried about Joe, that you allowed yourself to end up butthurt again. She gave it to him. It wasn't a they. She gave it to him. She kept saying, he deserves this, he deserves that. I was concerned about him. I got to make this happen for him. This was nobody else but her. It was her. By her own words. And then, at last, a fulsome, generous endorsement. Selecting Kamala as my vice president was the very first decision I made when I became our nominee. And it was the best decision I made in my whole career. Given that his career spanned half a century, that was saying something. No, the fuck it wasn't. That man spoke for an hour about himself. In the last 32.5 seconds, he finally had a Destiny's Child moment and said your name. That wasn't saying anything. I need women as a whole. Women as a whole here. I need for us to transcend being happy with a warm body. And what do I mean by that? For a long time, women and femme-presenting individuals have been pushed into, at least you got a warm body there. At least they're coming home to you. At least they said you were pretty. At least. We got to get past the at least. At least there's a warm body there to give you a compliment, to sprinkle a few dollars onto you, whatever. We have to decide that below the bare minimum, and the bare minimum is not enough. Because what is required of us is never the bare minimum. Once again, my rule is I don't ask anybody for something I can't give. And if somebody asks me for something that they can't give me, I back away. If you're expected to give more than the bare minimum, expect more than the bare minimum. That man got up there and stood for over an hour talking about himself. Talking about himself. August 20th, 77 days to the election. Convention, day 2. Tim and I left the convention that day to get back on the campaign trail. We couldn't afford 4 days out of the battleground states, but the only night they could spare me was the night of Doug's speech, which made me unhappy. Milwaukee was the closest battleground city, and it was the same stadium where the Republicans had held their convention the previous month and where the Democrats would have convened, but for COVID in 2020. In a perfectly timed and choreographed piece of stagecraft, the convention producers pulled off a live feed between the rally and the convention. You mean a regular day in 2024, 2025? I walked on stage in Milwaukee just as the roll call concluded in Chicago with my California delegation giving me their votes. The roll call is alphabetical, other than the nominee's home state, which is given the honor of being last. On the big screens in the Milwaukee Stadium, I recognized all the beaming faces of the California delegates bunched around the microphone. There were people who had been with me my whole career, some who had worked on my very first campaign, stuffing envelopes under my mother's guidance. It was an emotional moment for me, and it was wonderful to be able to thank those delegates and share the high excitement of the convention with the Wisconsin audience. Flying back to the convention, we watched live on my iPad as Doug gave his speech. We were about to land as Doug wrapped up. The cabin erupted. Doug, Doug, Doug. I was so proud of him. Before I became top of the ticket, Doug expected to have a minor role at the convention, a couple of minutes tucked in someplace. He was suddenly moved way up the roster. This man is an attorney. Attorney of great credit and accolades. Okay, he's been in the room with the best of them. He's spoken with the best of them. Like, it is weird. It is weird. Like, she has so much girl power that at times throughout this book, she kind of talks down like she's surprised that men that she knows can do certain stuff. But then at the other, okay, Kamala, okay. You're going Tuesday, he was told. Oh, okay. Who am I on with, he asked. Brock and Michelle. You three are the primetime package. No pressure. He'd worked hard, writing and practicing the speech. The words are good. I just have to do it justice, delivering it for her, he told Cole and Ella. He had written it with 3 main points. I want people to know she's a badass, that she spent her whole career working for the people, and I want them to know that she gives a shit. All of y'all are friends. Why would that make you nervous? And can we end the practice of having the spouses give speeches about the candidates? Because I don't know about you, but I don't give a damn what your spouse has to say about you. unless y'all have been co-workers, I don't give a damn. I have a great deal of respect for Michelle Obama, but I don't give a damn what she has to say about Barack in the political realm, on the campaign trail. I don't care. I don't want to hear from your friends. I want to hear from your colleagues, your coworkers. I want to hear from the common folk that you've worked with, that you've helped. I don't give a damn with the person who regularly or irregularly swaps undercarriage juices with you, because at the end of the day, that's what they want to continue to do, or benefit from the monetary gain of whatever you're about to step into. And that's no disrespect to Doug, but I don't care. And I think that it's the dumbest time filler that we do in politics. What do y'all expect the greatest benefactor of them gaining this position to say about them? He phrased it a little more delicately in the speech. Our family members, including Ella, Mina, and my goddaughter, Helena Hudlin, also took the stage to reminisce about my role in their lives. The way the kids stepped up into these highly public roles with grace and aplomb made me so proud. My baby nieces stole the show with their tutorial on how to pronounce my name. Comma, like a comma in a sentence, then la, like la la la. These are children from a family of attorneys with a highly famous aunt that's been famous their lifespan. Okay. Al Creative Cole had directed and narrated a funny and touching video that ran before Doug spoke. It had family pictures of Doug in his very 70s oversized bow tie at his bar mitzvah and an athletic hunk at summer camp. It had his official Employee of the Month photo from McDonald's and the photo of him wearing that ferocious expression as he grabbed the guy who'd rushed the stage at my event years earlier. The video dealt frankly with the sadness of the divorce from Kirsten and told the story of how we met and the family we'd all built together. The fuck does that have to do with whether or not she is able to run the country? Great wedding video. Great retirement video. She worked at a Fortune 500 company. What the hell does that tell me about her ability to run a country? When it comes to politics, we in the United States, we have lost the plot in what we look for, what we find acceptable, and our gauge. Then Doug's speech described to the world who I was to him, in our family, and as he witnessed my work in the vice president's office. It was an eloquent narrative and a bracing refutation of the ways I had been mischaracterized. First of all, he can't really tell anybody how you were as vice president because there's very little he could have witnessed. Who you are to him, once again, makes no damn difference when we're deciding who is to lead the country. Your role in the family makes no difference to the job you're applying for. If that were the case, every wife, every mother would be the CEO of every company. Because we could just base their life experience and let them run shit. Probably be a whole lot better. Especially the stay-at-home mom. Go lay down. I'm almost done. Doug's an excellent trial lawyer. He knows how to keep his cool under pressure. Told y'all. No one wants a lawyer who is nervous in front of an audience. But stepping out onto that huge stage, facing a forest of Doug signs, was a whole nother level. It's kind of easier to be calm when people are in your favor. He took a breath, centered himself, and started his speech with a shout out to my big, beautiful, blended family up there. Kirsten was sitting with Cole and Ella, Doug's parents, his brother, sister, and our niece and nephew, Arden and Jasper. And a special shout out to my mother, mimicking her Brooklyn accent, the only person in the whole world who thinks Kamala is the lucky one for marrying me. It was a speech full of humor, love, and passionate conviction. Dougie had nailed it. If this was the introduction to a dating show, and you all were the happy ending from this previous season. I would also love for this country to get to a point where we view women and femme-presenting individuals the same way we do men when it comes to career fields. Because nobody really gives a damn how good of a father or husband somebody is when they're applying for a job. And a campaign is you applying for a job. But that's just my take on it. If you missed any parts of tonight, I don't know if I can get access to the footage from the live last week where we got cut off and I got banned for a week. But this, once I have access to it, I will download it and put it up on YouTube. As always, with the other ones, I will see you all back here tomorrow, and we will pick up, for those following along with the book, you don't have to have it, on page 127. We will start with August 21st, 76 days to the election. As always, thank you for joining me here, and each one teach one, each one reach one. You all have a lovely evening, and enjoy your weekend.